Okay, our final panel of the day. We're talking about scaling products from a diversity of feedstocks to power up the US bioeconomy. And to take us through this panel, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage James Glueck, who's Executive Director of the Plant-Based Products Council. Now, James put this panel together of his members. It's a fantastic lineup for this final session. So can I have a big round of applause for James and his panelists?
Leo, thanks for the introduction. I'm excited about the final conversation of what has hopefully been a productive conference for you all. I know it has for me and folks on the panel. But for folks who aren't familiar, the Plant-Based Products Council, it's a Washington-based federal policy advocacy organization. And something that's unique about how we're structured as a membership organization are two factors. One, we take a value chain approach. And so everyone from growers all the way through folks who are kind of in the handling and kind of processing side of things, and kind of manufacturers of large and small scale, and folks that have product in the hands of consumers. So excited to visit with the panelists today. I think the other thing that's unique about how we're structured is that value chain approach, but also the fact that we're feedstock agnostic. We're founded 5 years ago with this idea that it doesn't really matter what the input is. Good policy should be good policy, and innovation shouldn't have to kind of make tough choices on the feedstock side. So I'm kind of eager to visit with the panelists, eager to learn more about kind of how their companies have worked in the feedstock space, and might start the conversation by asking each of you to introduce yourselves highly, or kind of at a high level, and then talk a little bit about your companies and the feedstocks you work with. So I'll start with Meredith.
Yeah, happy to kick it off. Hi, everyone. I'm Meredith Bottos. I'm the External Affairs Manager at Braskem America. First and foremost, thank you, James, for coordinating a great panel, and Leo and team for an amazing conference. We're happy to be the ones to round this out, but it's been a wonderful couple of days. Hopefully you all got as much out of this as I did. Braskem, for those of you who aren't familiar with us, is a leader in bioproducts. We've been producing bio-based polyethylene for around 15 years from sugarcane in Brazil. We also produce bio-based EVA. We're proud to be joint venture partners in the Sustainea project that Matt is here on the panel to talk about as well. And we're really looking at being champions for bioproduct innovation here in the US and globally. So happy to be here. Thanks so much.
Jonathan.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. And is it on? Testing? Yeah, there we go. My name is John Plisco. I am the Chief Commercial Officer for Loliware Corporation. And Loliware is a producer of a brand new category within the plant-based area and stuff like that. We're making resin replacements, resin polymers for plastic replacement out of seaweed resin. And you ask why seaweed? Well, right, seaweed's a very regenerative product. We can grow it very, very quickly. In a matter of 6 weeks, you can harvest it, grow it and harvest it. And it has a very low carbon footprint, as you may know. And so our job is to try to scale this material up and to utilize, we're trying to utilize the existing plastics equipment, base that's already established throughout the globe. And, that has its own challenges, but it's going pretty well for us. So that's really the basic. And my background is 40 years in regular polymers. I've been in compounding of plastic resins for 40 years, and now I've gone over to the light side, I guess, in this case, to sustainable polymers. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ken Kramer. I'm president and CTO of BioLogiq, based in Idaho Falls, Idaho. So we make an advanced thermoplastic starch. We use corn starch and potato starch and starch waste. We can also use transition starches. We've worked with large starch manufacturers to use either expired or transition starch that's not usable in other applications. We've developed our own internal mechanisms to modify that starch to make this thermoplastic starch to adjust, if you will, to both the biodegradable, compostable side of products. So we're a partner resin in that space, and also a partner resin in the polyolefin world, with some of the large fossil products that are used today.
Hello, Matthew Berdy, Global Commercial Director for Sustainea. I've been in the chemical space for more than 25 years. That increasingly gets to be a painful number to say with each passing year, but it's true. Sustainea, a joint venture of Braskem and Sojit. So, Braskem is kind of our big sister. Not that that's a comment towards you, Meredith, personally, but from a company standpoint. And so we're kind of the next evolution of Braskem's dedication to bioplastics. So we are a project that's focusing on the manufacturing of bio-based monoethylene glycol, which is used as one of the main precursors for manufacturing PET plastics and polyester fibers.
Thanks. So a pretty good cross-section of folks who are working in different spaces and across the country as well. And research and innovation are at the heart of what all of you all do and everyone in the room for the most part. And curious, as your companies have engaged in that innovation space and the research space, if you could maybe highlight or talk about some of the partnerships that have kind of worked well. And might start with you, Meredith. There's a couple of examples here.
Yeah. So as I said, Braskem has been in the bioproducts, bioplastic space for 15 years, but we are very proud that we recently, last fall, opened our Renewables Innovation Center in Lexington, Massachusetts, drawing from the state-of-the-art universities in the Boston area. We built a 35,000 square foot state-of-the-art facility to really push the needle on next generation bioproducts. And we also have some collaborative partnerships with universities like MIT and others working toward renewable innovation. So very proud to be champions in that space.
Nice. Ken, I know y'all have got some work with government as well as a partner.
Yeah, so multiple things, and as far as a partnership, so I'll start, James, at the polymer level. So being a partner resin, we need to work with everyone. So from Braskem to CJ to BASF, and also Eastman, Dow, and what was DuPont, we are collaborative with everyone. It's a really interesting position to be in that we're not really competitive. We legitimately are a partner resin. We don't stand on our own 2 feet, so we need to work with someone. As far as our product itself, it's USDA biopreferred, and then as recently we were awarded a grant for packaging from the USDA through Clemson University and their packaging program. So that's exciting. That's just recently happened in the past month. So it's focusing on agricultural products and fresh ag products, grapes and fruits and such that have a shelf life, shipping to Europe or across seas to where our packaging from the United States isn't meeting the product and it's being rejected. Similar to we heard earlier of plants being shut down because it's not meeting UK standards. So in that particular grant, we're looking to address this to help American farmers be more competitive so that our products can be accepted overseas.
So good examples there. And curious, as we think about making that leap from the laboratory to the manufacturing line, there are hurdles to growth that I'm sure each of you and your companies have faced. But curious if you might be able to talk a little bit about some of those challenges and maybe policy measures or incentives that have been helpful in rising to some of the challenges that you might have faced. So I might start here. Not you this time, Meredith.
Okay.
I'll start with Jonathan and see if he wants
Fine.
to
This is working
seem eager
again.
to jump in.
I think it's working again. Is this working
it is,
again?
yeah.
There you go. Sorry about that. Obviously we're a startup company. We're pre-Series A right now. We're in that period of time where we have the technology ironed out. We're starting to scale up, and so there's a lot of hurdles that we're facing in ours, and a lot of it has to do with sourcing of consistent raw material, regionalization of sourcing. Typically right now we're getting a lot of our product out of Asia, but we certainly would want to do that regionally in the Americas, and certainly in Europe the same way. We want to develop regional sourcing, consistency of quality, traceability of material. We need to know that the material is being being responsibly farmed and being responsibly managed, and that we're getting a consistent product and lot in, lot out. Those are some of the big areas initially, and then of course scale up. We're trying to scale up a material that's unknown to anybody in traditional plastic equipment. So the traditional plastic equipment is meant for very high temperature, high shear type applications, and we're the exact opposite. We're low shear, low temperature applications, and so we have a lot of difficulties with that. But there's a lot of ways of mitigating these things. Obviously, with supply chain, it's getting blockchain traceability back to the fields. With scalability in machining or in the machines, it's just a matter of getting partners that actually work with us. We've got a little bit of a consortium in Michigan of 3 companies that we work together to try to develop and scale this material from the compounding angle to the injection molding to the extrusion of the end products. And so this is working really, really well for us. And so those are some of the areas we have and some of the ways we're mitigating those areas.
Great. Other thoughts on sort of meeting the challenges into scaling? Yeah.
Yes, certainly. So, despite the fact that Sustainea has very deep and well-established roots from our parent companies, our sister companies, Braskem, Sojitz, in many ways, we are still very much a startup, similar to your company, Jonathan, in that we have these needs to go in the market, improve, viability in the market, working with brand owners and partners and their sustainability programs, their ESG initiatives. And so that's a lot of the work we're doing right now and getting interest from the market and showing viability in the market for our project and our product, especially in the way that we don't want to disrupt or take away from current initiatives. And I'm speaking mostly in this case about recycling, for example. So for PET in particular, as I'm sure it is for other plastics markets as well, recycling has taken quite a bit of hold, and we support that. And so making sure that our technology is supportive of those initiatives and work in hand with those for maximum environmental good at the end of the day.
Nice. Other thoughts on?
Yeah, I'll add a couple on scalability. So one, what we did, and I'm a mechanical engineer in the medical space for the majority of my career. So biopolymers is the past 5 years. So it's quite a transition. But I use those system architecture theories that I've used in medical devices over the years in looking at how do you create a modular system. So what we've done equipment-wise, which is proprietary, however, it's a 5,000-ton modular system. So in that, we can scale with this cellular manufacturing approach. You can drop that cell anywhere on the planet so that it can be adjacent to the appropriate complementary manufacturing process, whether that be in thermoforming, injection molding, film, and then we've recently got into nonwovens and spun bond and melt blown products. So I think that's one. The other thing I've always used fossil products for, I'm with you, I'm 33 years into this now. And in doing that, they're extremely consistent. And we started looking at these input ingredients coming in, and we go, wow, it's your MFI varies from 3 to 44. What? How? So what we've done, we've put our engineers, chemists, and scientists on this. So we've developed inline rheometry measurement, MFI measurement, and we adjust on these variable natural materials coming as an input. We are adjusting real time to get a consistent product out the end, where we've, in the past 18 months, reduced variability by 50%. So I think in working with natural materials versus, the polyolefins of the world, we've really got to start to think differently about what's coming in the door and how we adjust, whether it be with AI or other sensor mechanisms that we adjust manufacturing processes real time as we're moving through the system.
Nice. And Meredith, thoughts on the policy or?
Yeah, happy to jump in more on the policy side. So my role at Braskem is federal government affairs, and so very focused on policy. I think at Braskem, our I'm Green bio-based products, we have 28 products certified through the BioPreferred program. So that's a huge focus area for us from a policy perspective, not only continuing funding for that program, but potentially having some more teeth around driving demand for the bioeconomy. I think that would be supportive of probably everyone in this room. And we hope that that program continues to be resilient and drive demand forward. We're looking at other demand drivers for bioproducts. So thinking about at the state level, extended producer responsibility schemes and advocating for eco-modulation as a part of those schemes to drive fee reduction or incentives for renewable content as part of those schemes at the state level, and really just advocating for smart regulatory strategies and smart policy both at the federal and state level to, again, drive demand for our products and move the whole bioeconomy forward. I think one of our other focus areas here in the U.S. is leveraging existing infrastructure. So Braskem has 5 polypropylene plants here in the U.S. that are currently fossil-based, but we're contemplating and stepping into the bioattributed space and looking at leveraging that existing infrastructure and those existing facilities through mass balance bioattribution, leveraging the ISCC Plus certification to really scale up the use of biomaterials using existing infrastructure. So that's a way that we're, looking at scale from having these huge plants already in existence, but being able to support U.S. farmers and U.S. ag and scale bioproducts here.
Yeah, appreciate it. Matt, did you have something to add? Or?
Yes, absolutely. So, and that's one thing I feel like we're really behind as, if you want to call us an industry, the bioeconomy or bio initiatives is on the regulatory front, right? So if you're looking for regulators to, I hesitate to use the term force the industry to use, more positive, impactful materials, but there is some requirement of that. I mean, there's other parts of protective materials that are further along, and I'll lean on recycling for a second just because that's kind of the easiest one for me at the moment. But I haven't really seen, at least from my perspective, as much of that coordinated push for biomaterials. And I think that's needed for a variety of reasons. And they're not all selfish and all biased, even though I do have those reasons, certainly, as I imagine most people in this room do. But it's really more about if the combination of maximum positive environmental impact with giving more tools in the box for the industries. So it's one thing to say, hey, you have to have X% of recycled content in new products, right? Well, what does that force you to do? You have to use recycling, the amount of recycled material goes down, the cost goes up, and now you have undue economic burden on producers. Versus, let's say it has to be a mix of biomaterial plus recycling. Now you have more tools, now you have more flexibility. Now, if recycling costs go up, you can lean more on bio. If bio costs go up, you can lean more on recycling, but your end goal is still the same. You just have more vehicles to get you to your destination. I feel like there's a lot of different analogies to mix, but yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I think the optionality is key to growth as folks face different hurdles. In talking about the feedstock question too, each of your companies have made decisions on sort of what goes into the facility at a given point in time. And curious if there are certain attributes or characteristics as you all think about that decision point that were key to those moves.
For us, it's quite simple. We're a fully biodegradable and bioderived material, so it's pretty easy. Everything that goes into our material has to be non-chemically modified, so we're looking at meeting European standards on single-use plastics and things like that. But it's always been the mission of Loliware. That's just recently that's come up. That legislation has come about. It's actually helped us and really facilitated our growth in Europe and the interest coming out of Europe because it's either paper straw or our material, for straws. And I think we'd all rather have a plasticky straw than a paper straw. And so it's actually really pushed us to really ramp up faster and sooner. So we're going through that process right now. But it has to do with pigment systems, everything. Everything we put into our product has to be bioderived and biodegradable, fully biodegradable. And we're both biodegradable and compostable. We're both biodegradable both on land and in water and also compostable, both home composting, European standards, and industrial composting. And I think to your point on some of the recycling and stuff like that comes out of the recycling area, there's no avenue for compostability yet in the bigger world of APR and things like that. And we were just talking about that briefly before this meeting, that both of us have worked with APR to try to get that on the agenda, that they should be addressing these things. But I think that that's an area that we can start improving on. There has to be an avenue for true biomaterials out there. So whether it be PHA or ourselves or other people, there's got to be an avenue for that.
Your comment on paper straws makes me think of even the President of the United States has an opinion, I think, on that question.
Oh, yes,
We've
of course,
seen this
yes.
And thankfully, biobased is part of the solution in his toolkit as well. So, any other thoughts on that feedstock question?
So our company was founded in Idaho Falls, trying to find a way to utilize the goop coming off of cutting French fries in potato country. So it started out as just a potato waste product, which now producers wouldn't really say there is a potato waste product because the starch is utilized in multiple applications today. But when the company started, that was the case. Then we moved into corn, and we're in the corn belt, and everyone wants to find more uses for corn. We don't really feel that pressure in the Midwest with we're not going to have enough corn. It is what else can we do with it and move forward? Also, as we've set up factories in Asia as well, we've also moved to cassava and tapioca as a feedstock because potato is at a premium. So the interesting thing is that we can use those multiple feedstocks and are also starting to have some discussion on using pea starch as well. So we're really agnostic on what we use, but we like focusing on corn because it's of abundance, at least here in the Midwest.
Yeah, and look, I think that's one of the overall strengths when you talk about renewable and bio-based chemistries, right, is that flexibility. You just spoke obviously about the number of different inputs you can use. Similar with the technology Sustainea is using to make bio-monoethylene glycol. Our plant is being built in Lafayette, Indiana. Therefore, we are using corn as the most sensible source. But at the end of the day, as long as we have a source of dextrose, we can run our technology. And so, I'll pick on petrochemicals for a second. You start with oil. You have to start with oil. Everything comes from oil. But take our process, for example. We don't have to start with corn. Obviously, we like to start with corn. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. But that doesn't trap us in having to build a plant in a particular part of the world because we have to have corn. If it was another part of the world, it might be sugarcane. If it was a different part of the world, it might be wood. As long as it's a source of dextrose. And I think, again, bio-based materials really have that unique strength versus a lot of other chemistries where your technologies have that real incredible flexibility of feedstock that others just don't have.
No, I appreciate that and the examples that have been shared. Something else that the Plant-Based Products Council does is kind of track consumer data, and something that I think clearly the market is demand driven in this space. We've seen just among consumers, currently 70% of those surveyed say they're demanding these types of products, up 20% in 5 years. So clearly a growth area. But that's also predicated on some transparency and credibility, that trust that consumers have in that the product they're purchasing is the product that they expect to receive. Welcome your thoughts on ways to maintain kind of on that bargain that you're kind of that agreement you're making with the consumer. Meredith, maybe start here.
Yeah, happy to start on this one. So in Brazil, with our sugarcane-based I'm Green bio-based products, we use a platform called Bon Sucro for certification of our sustainably sourced sugarcane. But we look to certifying bodies just dependent on the work that we're doing. So like I mentioned, here in the U.S. with our mass balance approach, we're leveraging ISCC Plus, but very much focused on transparency and credibility and leveraging these certifying bodies to ensure that at the end of the day, consumers can have confidence that what they're seeing on the label is what they're getting. So I think that's of utmost importance to us.
Great. Ken, any thoughts?
Yeah, a couple of things. So one, we've taken a transparency approach. We were looking for something that, was a label, if you will. So on the biodegradable, compostable side of it, you can get CMA, BPI approval, TUV, OK Home compost, and such. But on the other side, when we mix plant-based products with polyolefins, there's really nothing. So we kind of created our own good housekeeping seal called the IQ label. And in that, we work with brands like, we've done this for Verizon, we've done this for IKEA, to where there's a QR code on the package, you scan that, and it goes into some detail about the contents of the product and the traceability of those contents and the value propositions, if you will, because it's not just a label conversation with a consumer. It's complicated to explain why a bio-based product is good for the planet and good for the environment. And we're seeing some success in doing that. We would be happy if that becomes some kind of adopted standard, but for the lack of anything there, that's what we went after.
Great. Jonathan, thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of mentioned it a few minutes
yeah.
ago, but I mean, we have to conform to biodegradation rules, globally, and compostable, measures, and that's what we have to do, and we have to check that. We have to routinely check that. We have to also routinely check our incoming raw materials to make sure we don't have any miscellaneous, how would you say? Ingredients that are not supposed to be there, like microplastics and things like that. So we do check on all that. And so it's really, really important that we do that and are able to label that and certify that and knows what matters, because it is our credibility, right? We're saying it's something, and we need to make sure that it is what we say it is. And it's imperative at this point.
Yeah.
Just another thing to mention, as part of the USDA BioPreferred program, there is an ASTM method to carbon date products. So we also leverage that as a standard and a way to essentially test or certify that, again, what we're saying is in the product actually is. So I think that's another way of kind of leveraging not only certifications, but also testing standards for part of this criteria.
No, I appreciate that, and know that our time is coming to a close up here, but thought maybe as sort of almost a rapid fire question, thinking about those consumer kind of tastes and preferences that are driving demand, they can change, right? They're fickle in kind of on what attributes folks care about. So curious if we might just kind of go down the line, maybe starting with Matt, and maybe a thought on a single factor that might be key in the longevity of this industry.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I mean, look, regulatory help will go a long way. The reality is that while we do our best to prove value with these products, a lot of them just don't have the economies of scale that petrochemical alternatives do. And so without that regulatory support, market must-haves and bad economies become nice-to-haves. And when those things get tight, nice-to-haves tend to get cut off. And so that continues to be a challenge from my way of thinking, is that really embedding that more strongly in the supply chain and how the products are made would go really a long way to longer term sustainability, frankly.
Yeah, I'm going to go with cost. When I talk to my friends in Bentonville, if our biomaterials cost less than fossil, they would be utilized significantly more. So I think it's been a common theme over the past couple of days. We've got to stand on our own 2 feet. We've got to pick the niche companies to work with that are smaller in nature, to build a foundation to be able to scale and go after the larger volumes of product. So I'm going with cost.
Yeah, I think we're gonna focus on creating a good product and just a product that can be utilized in the space it's meant to be utilized. There's a lot of spaces out there that you can expand and go off and into, but I think at this point in time, to get credibility and to get scale and to get adoption in the marketplace, we got to stay in the space that we're good at. We're not highly chemical resistant. We've got other things. We have a processing temperature that's quite narrow and stuff like that. So we have a very limited space. That'll grow over time, and let it grow over time. But let's address it and put it in the places it's supposed to be. Because if we start putting it in places it's not supposed to be, we're going to have failure, and it's going to hurt the entire bio market. And that's not our goal. Our goal is to grow the entire market, regardless of what angle you are coming from. So.
I'm going to go with consumer education. So I think we each have our own sustainable products and bio-based products. And there, like we've talked about behind the scenes, there is no silver bullet, right? So I think making sure that consumers are educated about what they're purchasing, about the different types of solutions out there. Our I'm Green bio-based products are technical drop-ins, so our polyethylene products are fully recyclable. Some end-of-life looks very different, biodegradable, compostable, or things that we've also talked about today. So just educating consumers on the various solutions that are out there in the bio-based space and making sure that they are aware of what those solutions offer to them, I think is a huge part of what Braskem is also trying to do on the consumer side.
Great. Well, with the wrap-up of consumer education, I think that our time has expired or close to expiring. So thank you all for participating, and hopefully you all learned something new too about the range of feedstocks and that the challenges are similar regardless of what the input looks like. So thank you all very much. I'll turn it back over to Leo.